And we begin this Sunday morning with America's soft economic war with China and President Trump's efforts to de-escalate this weekend. The president now allowing exemptions to his reciprocal tariffs on smartphones, laptop computers, and the machines that make semiconductor chips, all electronics largely produced outside of America. The new temporary policy narrows the scope of items that fall under President Trump's 145% tariff on China and Chinese imports, which this week sparked retaliation from Communist China, which hit back with its own 125% tariff on U.S. goods. More on the escalating trade war with China and its impact on the economy from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and J.P. Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon shortly. But first, as President Trump was battling Communist China over the cost of trade in Washington, he was also deploying Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to battle the communist nation's dominance at one of America's key shipping lanes at the Panama Canal. On Wednesday, the U.S. and Panama agreed to a deal that reaffirms Panama's sovereignty and outlines new military cooperation. The president sending troops to the Panama Canal to defend American interests after years of China exerting influence over the vital waterway, in which over 40% of U.S. container traffic passes through that canal on a yearly basis. A $23 billion deal between American investment firm BlackRock and Hong Kong-based CK Hutchison for 43 ports, including 2 ports at the Panama Canal, is now on hold after the Chinese Communist Party announced it is investigating the deal in an effort to stop it. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, just back from the Panama Canal, joins me right now in this Sunday Morning Futures exclusive. Secretary, great to see you this morning. Thanks so much for joining us.
Of course.
Tell us about the trip and what are the most important takeaways that we need to understand about the Panama Canal.
Well, President Trump said in his State of the Union address, China has too much influence over the Panama Canal and America's going to take it back. And that's exactly what I was charged to do, what we're continuing to do. China's influence cannot control our own backyard, especially a critical waterway, key terrain like the Panama Canal. You mentioned 40% of ships are U.S. ships. 75% are going to or from a port. So we were able to secure 2 historic agreements. One with the Panama Canal Authority, that our ships, our military vessels and auxiliary vessels will travel first and free through that Panama Canal. And then we also signed a memorandum of understanding with the defense secretary over there and the president that established a robust and growing U.S. presence, right? You need to secure that key terrain. So Fort Sherman will reopen jointly with the Panamanians, a jungle school, and we're going to have a larger U.S. presence at the invitation of Panama, working with them to keep the Communist Chinese out. If we can't use that waterway in a key contingency, then China has an advantage. Other presidents have allowed us, we've been sort of asleep at the wheel. President Trump has said we need to be serious about our own backyard. That includes a place like the Panama Canal. And I want to thank President Molino, a pro-Trump, pro-America president of Panama, who's sticking his neck out against communists whose influence was real there, Maria. We could see it. You could feel it. The Communist Chinese want to control politicians. They're building infrastructure projects. They want to surveil. They want to take that canal. President Trump says, not on our watch, and we're fighting back.
That's unbelievable. And when I spoke with President Trump in an interview last month, he said that all the signage around the canal was all in Chinese. When you're going into it, it's all Chinese signs. When you're coming out of it, there's all Chinese signs. That was sort of one piece of color that indicates how dominant they've been.
Correct. They're building a tunnel underneath the canal they're paying for. What could that be used for? Surveillance of submarines, of ships, bridges over the top, cranes within. We flew by their cranes in that port. Antennas all over them. What are those used to do? By now, they're removing a lot of that signage, but removing signage is not enough. You've got to remove the insidious influence. And in getting these agreements signed, it was a big effort across our DOD with their leaders. But they know that by coming closer to the United States and allowing additional joint U.S. presence, that's pushing out nefarious, malicious Chinese influence. The Chinese didn't like what happened in Panama this week. Not at all. Because this is a return of U.S. leadership, peace through strength, and the course was charted by President Trump.
Do you expect this deal between BlackRock and CK Hutchison to go forward? China doesn't want it to go forward. I mean, President Trump said he'd rather deal with BlackRock, an American company, than a Hong Kong-based company.
Well, I agree with the president. And in sitting down with President Molino of Panama, they had just received the audit, which showed that Hutchinson, the Chinese firm, had hundreds of millions of dollars that they owed. They were going to reveal they had not paid. So this was not a good deal for Panama, whereas the BlackRock deal is more straightforward and an American company. So the Panama would like it. President Trump has said we need it. Combine that with kicking out the Belt and Road Initiative, which Secretary of State Rubio got on his first trip in February, and we're getting to the point where Panama and the U.S. are shoulder to shoulder saying, get out, China, and that serves us.
Unbelievable. We're going to keep talking about this as it relates to trade coming up. Let me get your take on Iran, Secretary, because, of course, we've had direct talks yesterday. They began in the past. It's been indirect talks with a mediator. But there's Steve Witkoff meeting with the foreign minister of Iran. What can you tell us?
Well, I can tell you that President Trump is dead serious on this issue. He's dead serious that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. He's said that for 20 years. He's been consistent. That is clear. He's dead serious that he wants it done at the negotiating table. He wants it done peacefully. Yeah. And that's why he's going straight to these talks. He set that deadline. These were productive talks yesterday. I don't want to get ahead of our skis. Steve Witkoff does a fantastic job, but it was a good step, and they're gonna go at it again on Saturday. But he's also dead serious that if we can't figure this out at the negotiating table, then there are other options, to include my department, to ensure that Iran never has a nuclear bomb. We hope we never get there. We really do, Maria. But what we're doing with the Houthis and what we're doing in the region, we've shown a capability to go far, to go deep, and to go big. And again, we don't want to do that. But if we have to, we will, to prevent the nuclear bomb in Iran's hands.
I was reading about some of the armament used against the Houthis and these proxies of Iran, and it suggested to me that we were sending a message to ensure that the Houthis and the Iranians understood the kind of capability we have in our military should we need to use them.
Well, we know, Maria, that Iran's taken a look at what's happening to the Houthis and realizing they don't want any part of it. And that's because we're dismantling the Houthis' capabilities. We're even hearing rumblings of them second-guessing what they're doing. Ultimately, we just want to open up our shipping lanes. That's it. It's a very narrow interest with the Houthis, but it sends a clear signal to Iran as well. You're not going to mess with the United States. Iran, come to the table, negotiate full dismantlement of your nuclear capabilities, and then that doesn't have to be your future.
And the president last week with Benjamin Netanyahu unveiled plans for $1 trillion defense budget next year, massive increase that the president said will provide the country with unmatched military strength. What can you tell us about that, Secretary? Because we've been seeing lots of worries about the Navy, the number of ships in the United States versus what China has. Are you reversing that at this point?
We are rebuilding America's military, which President Trump has charged me with doing. We're going to find efficiencies. We just cut $5.1 billion on Friday of useless contracts at DoD. So we're cutting where we need to find where we can, and there's tens of billions more to find. Yeah. But we're adding on top of it a generational investment, Maria. President Trump investing in the F-47, sixth-generation fighter, more ships, shipbuilding, long-range missiles, all the types of future of armaments we're going to need for future conflicts. This is a generational rebuilding because the Communist Chinese, are ascendant. They're investing in their military. We're going to achieve peace through strength, and President Trump's going to fund it.
And at the same time, the Democrats are mocking the efforts and mocking you. Hakeem Jeffries released a statement on Thread saying the so-called defense secretary has ordered 400 books removed from the Naval Academy. He came up with a new description of DEI. I'm sure you saw that. Dumb, effing individuals? DEI?
Oh, boy. That's how far they've fallen. It's astonishing, not surprising. Of course, they don't like the fact that we're ripping DEI out of the military and making it colorblind and merit-based. If their whole strategy is, I don't even know how long the video was, didn't see it, minute-long videos on TikTok to call us names while we secure the southern border, kick out Chinese influence, revive the warrior culture inside our military. That's why they lost in a historic fashion to President Trump last time, and their future looks bleak as well. So we're looking at all the ways in which our military academies educate and giving guidance to get rid of DEI, and I think the American people appreciate that.
Secretary, it's great to have you this morning. Thanks very much for all of your efforts.
Thank you, Maria.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth.